This is part 5 of chapter 6. We are reading from The Rape of the Mind by Just A.M. Merleau, M.D. The retreat to automatization. Introverted schizophrenics prefer the automatic routine life of the asylum to life in the outside world, on the condition that they be allowed to indulge their private fantasies. They surrender utterly to self-defeatism. They never congregate in groups. They seldom talk with one another. Even when they do, they never have any real mutual contact. Each one lives in his own retreat. In the totalitarian myth, think, for instance, of Das Dritte Reich. In the psychological folklore of our mythical state, the vague fantasy of the technically perfected womb, the ideal nirvana, plays a tremendous role. In a world full of insecurities, a world requiring continual alert, adjustment, and readjustment, totalitarian creates the delusion of the omnipotent, miraculous ideal state, a state where in its final form every material need will be satisfied. Everything will be regulated just as it was for the fetus in the womb, the land of bliss and equanimity, just as it is for the schizophrenic in the mental hospital. There is no social struggle, no mental struggle. The world moves like clockwork. There is no real interplay between people, no clash of opinions or beliefs. There is no emotional relationship between these womb fellows. Each exists as a separate number-bearing entity in the same filing system. In totalitaria, there is no faith in fellow men, no caritas, no love, because real relationships between men do not exist, just as they do not exist between schizophrenics. There is only faith in and subjection to the feeding system, and there is in every citizen a tremendous fear of being expelled from that system. A fear of being totally lost, comparable with the schizophrenic's feeling of rejection and fear of reality. In the midst of spiritual loneliness and isolation, there is the fear of still greater loneliness, of more painful isolation. Without protective regulations from the outside, internal hell may break loose. Strong mechanical external order must be used to cover the internal chaos and approaching breakdown. We have had experience in post-war years with several refugees from the totalitarian world who broke down when they had to cope with a world of freedom where personal initiative was required. The fear of freedom brought them to a state of panic. They no longer had strong enough egos to build and maintain their defenses against the competitive demands of free democratic reality. As in schizophrenia, a maneuverable and individual ego cannot exist in totalitaria. In schizophrenia, the ego shrinks as a result of withdrawal. In totalitaria, as a result of constant merging in mass feelings. If a shrunken ego should grow up with its own critical attitude, its needs for verification of facts and for understanding, it would then be beaten down as being treacherous and non-conforming. Totalitaria requires of its citizens complete subjection to and identification with the leader. It is this leader dominance that makes people nearly go egoless, as they are in schizophrenia. This again may result in loss of control of hostile and destructive drives. Psychologists have seen this time and time again in what we can call the concentration camp psyche. When the victims first came to the camp, dedicated to their gradual extermination, most of them displayed a complete loss of self, an utter depersonalization combined with apathy and loss of awareness. The same observations have been made among our POWs in Korea. Some concentration camp victims got better immediately after their return to a normal society. In others, the schizophrenic reaction of lost ego remained and, as we mentioned above, sometimes developed into a real psychosis. The womb state. Totalitarianism is man's escape from the fearful realities of life into the virtual womb of the leader. The individual's actions are directed from this womb, from the inner sanctum. The mystic center is in control of everything. Man need no longer assume responsibility for his own life. The order and logic of the prenatal world reign. There is peace and silence, the peace of utter submission. The members of the womb state do not really communicate. Between them there is silence, the silence of possible betrayal. not the mature silence of reticence and reservedness. Totalitaria increases the gap between things one shows and communicates and the things one secretly dreams and thinks deep within oneself. It develops the artificial split-mindedness of political silence. Whatever little remains of individual feeling and opinion is kept carefully enclosed. In the schizophrenic world of totalitaria, there is no free mutual exchange, no conversation, no exclamation, no release from emotional tension. It is a world of silent conspirators. Indeed, the atmosphere of suspicion is the big attacker of mental freedom because it makes people cling together, conspiring against mysterious enemies, first from outside, then among themselves. In totalitaria, each citizen is continually watched. The mythical state molds the individual's conscience. He has hardly any of his own. His neighbors watch him, his postman, his children, and they all represent the punishing state, just as he himself must represent the state and watch others. Not betraying them is a crime. The need to find conspiracies to discover persecutors and criminals is another schizophrenic manifestation. It is psychologically related to an infantile need for a feeling of omnipotence. Megalomaniac feelings grow better in an atmosphere of mysterious secrecy. Secrecy and conspiracy increase the delusion of power. That is why so many people like to pry into other people's lives and to play the spy. This feeling of conspiracy also lies behind the pathological struggle with imaginary persecutors, a struggle we find both in mentally ill individuals and in our mythical totalitaria. It is there. It is chasing us. All the inner fears of losing the nirvanic womb illusion become rampant. Mysterious ghosts and vultures chase people out of nirvana and paradise. In these fantasies, the patriarch, the dictator, the idol, becomes both the universal danger and the omnipotent savior at the same time. Not even the citizens of totalitaria really love this cruel giant. Suspicion against the beast that feeds and the hand that guides and forbids is often found in the fantasy of schizophrenic children, who experience the nourisher as the enemy, the dominating ogre, bribing the growing mind into submission. The deep hate the sick individual feels toward the parental figure cannot be expressed directly, and so it is displayed onto the self or onto scapegoats. Scapegoatism is also part of the totalitarian strategy. As we pointed out before, the scapegoat temporarily absorbs all the individual's inner fury and rage. Kulaks, Negroes, Jews, communists, capitalists, profiteers, and warmongers, any or all of them can play the role. Perhaps the greatest dangers to the totalitarian mind is the use of intellect and awareness and the egghead's demand for free, verifying thinking. Aberration and perversion are chosen by the citizens of totalitaria as they are by the inhabitants of madhouses, over-tiring intellectual control. In the center of the totalitarian fears and fantasies stands the man-eating god and idol. He is unconquerable. He uses man's great gift of adjustment to bring him to slavery. Every man's inner core of feelings and thoughts has to belong to the leader. Is the citizen of totalitaria consciously aware of this? Probably not. Modern psychology has taught us how strongly the mental mechanism of denial of reality works. The I bypasses external occurrences when the mind does not want them to happen. Secondary justifications and fantasies are formed to support and explain these denials. In totalitaria, we find the same despising of reality facts as we do in schizophrenia. How else are we to explain the fact that Hitler was still moving his armies on paper after they were already defeated? And we will stop this right there, and we will finish up this chapter, chapter 6, in the next video. It will be a very short little video because there's not much left of the chapter, but it won't fit on this one. So I will see you in the concluding video of chapter 6, The Rape of the Mind.